Hello everyone, I am Miss Maka.
And I am Mr. Daryl. Welcome back to Book Club on Telescola.
Yes, so today we have chosen a very special book for you.
And that is Othello by Shakespeare.
By William Shakespeare.
This is a play about jealousy. That is the main thing about this play.
Okay, but of course, Mr. Daryl, before we start talking about the book itself, let's look at our agenda. So traditionally, we start with our vocabulary part. Then we will talk about the author. After that, we will talk about the summary of the book, telling you shortly what is the book about.
And from there, we will look at some of the characters that are important to the play. We'll have a look at the setting, the when, the where of the play, and finally present some main themes to you.
Yeah, but that is not the ending of our program. Last thing we do is give you the homework. Okay, now Mr. Daryl, let's start with the vocabulary part.
I think it's time. First off, we have a noun, victory, victory. This is a success or triumph over an enemy in war or some other situation.
გამარჯვება.
Next, we have a noun, jealousy, jealousy. Being uneasy because you desire something or wish for the success of someone else to come to you.
ეჭვიანობა.
Next word is honor. Honor. It's a noun as well. Honesty or fairness in one's beliefs or actions.
ღირსება, პატიოსნება.
Our next word, another noun, is handkerchief. Yes, that's how it's pronounced. Handkerchief. Used especially when you need to wipe your eyes or nose or forehead.
Yes, and it is important thing in the story, right, Mr. Daryl?
Yes, that's right.
ცხვირსახოცი.
Our next word is riot. Riot. This is violent or wild disorder or confusion.
აჯანყება, სახალხო არეულობა, მღელვარება.
Our next word is an adjective, innocent. Innocent. The meaning is to be free from legal or moral wrong.
უდანაშაულო, უმანკო.
Our next verb is to deceive. To deceive. This is to mislead by false appearances.
მოტყუება, შეცდომაში შეყვანა.
And we'll finish on a verb, to resist. To resist. To strive against or defend oneself from outside forces.
Yeah, შეწინააღმდეგება.
Well, Ms. Maka, let's move on to the author,
Yes, it's interesting.
William Shakespeare. Last time we spoke about his more basic facts. Let's look at something new today. His work is extraordinary and deserving of special attention, although at the time it was perceived or seen as just entertainment.
Yeah, and in fact, Shakespeare's reputation as Britain's dramatist did not begin until late 18th century. His storytelling captured people's attention, and by the end of the 19th century, his reputation was solidly established.
And as everyone knows, he's widely studied, widely imitated, and widely looked up to for modern authors and all throughout history. And that is a testament, I think, Ms. Maka, to the timelessness, the universality of his plays.
Yes, and as we've mentioned, like he had very diverse. He had a diversity in his genres, right? So now I have a question to our audience. So which of the four genres mentioned do you prefer to read literature about? This is tragedy, comedy, history, or romance?
I prefer history stories because they are true and yet also can teach us something about people in the same way as imaginary history.
Oh yes, some people really prefer to read about facts and real stories rather than some imagined ones. So what about you, Mr. Daryl?
No, I like adventure stories. I like thoughtful stories as well. And history combines them both sometimes, so that's perfect.
Yes, so it's manageable to do history, some real facts and some imagined ones.
I agree. Ms. Maka, let's move on to the summary of the story now. It's a classic story, but I think we still need a summary. So, to begin, unusually, with Iago, this other character, Iago, a Venetian soldier and ensign, a lieutenant, is passed over for promotion by Othello, the man the play is named after. He's a Moorish nobleman who has reached the top of his career. He's a general of the Venetian army in Italy, and has secretly married a very beautiful woman named Desdemona, daughter of an important statesman in Venice.
When Othello is sent to Venice to defend Cyprus from the attack of Turks, Desdemona, his wife, actually joins him to defend, to save, and to keep safe Iago and his wife. So Iago begins to scheme his earnest. Iago convinces Othello that his wife is not faithful, so she cheats on him. This is probably the beginning of the main plot of the story.
It is indeed. Othello soon becomes obsessively jealous, and he's willing to believe anything that anyone tells him about his innocent wife. Iago's final proof, there's a few things that happen, but his final proof is Desdemona's handkerchief, which turns up in an unexpected place, and Othello goes crazy over this.
Yes, and actually Desdemona cannot produce the handkerchief. So this is the reason that Othello does not believe in her and is assured that she was not faithful for him. And he swears to take revenge on her and Cassio. So that evening Othello orders Desdemona to await him alone in bed.
Mm-hmm. Now we move to the end of the play, basically. Othello kills her with a pillow. Iago enters the scene, is arrested, and almost killed by Othello, who is now horrified when he understands the truth of the matter, that Desdemona was innocent. Despite demands for the explanation, Iago refuses to give any explanation, which makes him more scary. Like he has you can't understand why he did what he did.
Yeah, maybe the main reason is jealousy, definitely, of course. But before Othello can be led away to face his justice, he begs his listeners to speak of him. So, as one that loved not wisely, but too well.
A very classic line as well from the play.
Exactly. And he then draws a concealed weapon and stabs himself, and before he dies, he kisses Desdemona.
Shakespeare had a talent for really dark endings.
Exactly. So we can say it's too romantic and too scary also.
Romeo and Juliet ends in the same way. The lovers die, and
exactly.
by suicide too.
Okay.
Let's move on to our question based on the summary. Do you think that Othello is the cause of his own troubles, or is he the victim of Iago's plans?
I think that Othello was the cause of his own troubles. It was easy for Iago to make him jealous, which means that Othello was a jealous man within himself from the start.
Interesting answer, yeah. If Othello was a better man, he wouldn't have fallen so easily to the plans of a scheming Iago.
Yeah, definitely, it is so. Thank you very much. Now let's look at the characters of the story. And of course we will start with the first and main character, the protagonist and the hero. This is Othello. So a Christian Moor and general of the armies. So he is, if we talk about his figure, he is very powerful, but he is an easy prey to insecurities, okay? We can also see how easily he is deceived that his wife is unfaithful, right? So he is free and open nature, and that would be seen as a weak point in his character.
Mm-hmm. So the weakness in Othello.
Exactly.
We move to pretty much the opposite of Othello, the antagonist of the play, Iago. Othello's ensign, which is another way of saying lieutenant or assistant, and he is the villain. His reasons are never clear why he does what he does. There's a few things you can suspect, maybe jealousy, maybe envy, and so on, but it's never really clear. He never explains himself either. And he seems to take a delight, he's quite happy to behave in this diabolical, devilish way.
Yeah, definitely. So the next character is Desdemona. So she is the daughter of a senator, Brabantio. Okay, so this is Desdemona and Othello are secretly married before the play begins. In many ways, we can see that she is stereotypically pure and meek. Desdemona is also very determined and self-possessed. So during this story, we can see that she is equally capable of defending her marriage by joking with Iago and also responding with dignity to Othello's incomprehensible jealousy.
Very good. We have another character, Cassio. Cassio, his big problem is inexperience, we might say. He doesn't really know how to behave sometimes. And Iago takes advantage of his inexperience. So he's young, he's presented as good looking and handsome, and Iago manipulates the situation to make Cassio the person that Othello suspects of being Desdemona's secret lover. And Cassio is not clever enough to get himself out of the situation, and he's easily manipulated in this way.
Yes. So, and what about Rodrigo, our next character? This is a jealous suitor of Desdemona. So, young, rich, and a bit foolish character because he is in love with Desdemona and is convinced that if he gives Iago all of his money, he will help like Rodrigo to win Desdemona's hand, but of course very foolish to just give everything away. But of course, from the story we can see that Desdemona loves Othello, and Rodrigo stays very frustrated by the end of the story.
And the last character is the father of Desdemona, Brabantio. And like most Shakespearean fathers, he's presented as a kind of intruding presence. He complicates things by his presence. So he's kind of self-important. He thinks very highly of himself. And he feels betrayed when Othello marries his daughter.
Oh, yes. Sometimes it is tough to explain fathers and mothers what happens why, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's ask a question to our audience. Do you think that Iago is truly evil, or can his plans and plots be explained in any way?
Iago seems truly evil to me. He has no clear reason for doing the things that he does, and he does it only to destroy everything around him.
Yes, maybe, because whenever you do something wrong, there is no explanation.
It's hard to disagree with that answer.
Thank you very much. Okay, now let's move on to the setting part and when the story happened. This is late 18th century, 1570, 1573.
Yes, indeed. And it is set in Venice, presumably sometime in the late 16th century, as we saw. Venice is at war with the Ottoman Empire at the time, and this gives a good context for Othello being a soldier, a general in the army, and it also gives this feeling of dread. The Ottoman Empire army could attack at any moment, so there's this kind of sense of like suspense.
Yes, and where the story happens. This is Venice and Cyprus. So Venice was well known as an early example of what might later be called a multicultural city, boasting a much greater diversity of ethnicities and religions amongst its inhabitants. There were lots of Europeans and some other people, so that created a very diverse atmosphere all around the city.
And it fits into the father of Desdemona. He's outraged that his daughter has married someone who's clearly an outsider to Venetian society. Othello is a Moor and he's in Italy. Venice also works in the following way. Othello gets respect and he proves himself to become the general of an army, but he's not accepted. He's not fully accepted. So he's done well enough in this town, but he hasn't won the love of everyone. And that goes into part of the way he falls.
Sad. It's really sad. Okay. Now, what about the question, Mr. Dowell?
Yes, indeed. Here is the question to our audience. Why do you think that Othello is set in the city of Venice?
Okay, so I think Venice was a multicultural city at the time. So as you have already mentioned, so I think it was perfect for the story in Italy more.
Well, yeah, well said. It's an ideal setting, and that's probably why he picks Italy of all places when he could have picked England or somewhere else.
And it was, as we mentioned, a multicultural city, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's look at the main themes. So we, of course, there are lots of main themes, as we always mention. We have chosen military heroism and love. So, of course, we should never forget that Othello was a soldier, and his career really had an effect on his married life. Despite the fact that Desdemona really felt pretty comfortable with her life, she still followed her husband to Cyprus.
She is indeed, Othello's a fair warrior in a sense, and he's happiest when he has her by his side even in combat situations or regular city life. The military also provides Othello with his means to gain his reputation. He's a foreigner, of course, and so it's hard for foreigners to be accepted anywhere, but because he proves himself as a soldier and wins battles and wins victories for Italy, he's accepted in that way. And so his marriage to Desdemona can work in that sense.
Yes, of course, in this case, but still he would spend more time on his career rather than maybe on his married life.
And that might have been part of the problem as to why jealousy came
appears.
in.
Yeah, exactly. Then he would have a reason. Oh, maybe that's why she is unfaithful. Who knows? And again, this is up to the readers. Yeah.
To decide. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Our next topic is jealousy, as we've mentioned, and jealousy motivates the central conflicts of Othello. So, Iago's resentment of Othello and Othello's suspicion of Desdemona. So, Iago is immediately seen as a jealous character, and he implies that his hatred of Othello is rooted in jealousy, since there are rumors of Othello having slept with Emilia.
It seems that Iago's jealousy is so intense that he doesn't even need proof to believe that Othello could have been capable of this. Appropriately, Iago decides to seek revenge by using jealousy as a weapon against Othello. So Iago feels jealousy and he uses jealousy as a weapon to get Othello down. Iago knows, perhaps from his own experience, that jealousy is the ultimate form of psychological torture. So he uses this, he specifically chooses to make Othello jealous of Desdemona because he knows this will affect him in the worst possible way.
Yes, and by making Othello feel the torments of jealousy towards Desdemona and her supposed lover, Iago causes Othello to suffer as much as he does.
So it really is the ultimate play about jealousy.
Yes, exactly.
From here, we've got to move on to our last theme, the danger of isolation, which is what happens to a lot of these characters. Othello, Iago, Desdemona, Emilia, Rodrigo, when they, in their respective scenes, they're all isolated in a sense in Cyprus. They have nothing to do but start to believe rumors about each other. And most importantly, speaking of isolation, Othello himself is isolated in an obvious way. He's a foreigner in the country, and his physical appearance and color of his skin marks him out immediately. And Iago is expert at manipulating the distances between characters, isolating them when he needs them to be isolated, and then further tricking them when he needs to.
Yes, but Iago actually falls his own obsession with revenge. And we can say that people are not the islands, right? And this kind of self-isolation brings people to self-destruction, definitely. And in the story ending also tells us this, yeah, right? By self-isolation, the ending is very tragic for Iago, for Othello, and even for Emilia.
So some great themes in this play, and that's probably why it's so popular.
Of course.
We have one more question for the audience, and here it is. Is tragedy formed from the flaws in a person or in the situation that they find themselves in?
I think tragedy comes from flaw in the person's character, because everyone is responsible for their own lives and everything happens by their own choices.
Very good answer, a very thoughtful answer. You are responsible for your own actions.
Of course, and instead of deciding to take a revenge on somebody, you can just forgive maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Now I think it's time to wrap up everything. So we started with the author, the classic writer, William Shakespeare.
Then we had a look at the summary of the story, and it's a tale about jealousy between a famous Italian general and his wife and a manipulator.
Yes. Next, we talked about the characters. Of course, Othello with his wife Desdemona, and the main antagonist of the story. This is Iago.
From there, we have a look at the setting, mid-late 16th century, and the place is Venice and Cyprus.
And then next, we've chosen three main themes for you. This is military heroism and love, of course, jealousy and isolation.
Let's have a look at the vocabulary one last time, and I'll just say them really quickly, mostly for pronunciation purposes. Victory, jealousy, honor, handkerchief, riot, innocent, to deceive, and to resist.
Yes, thank you very much. And now it is time for our homework. Mr. Darrell, what is our homework for today?
Here is the question we chose for you today. The character of Iago is famous in literature for being an evil man. Why do you think he did the things he did? Give us your opinions. What was his motivation? And try to use the material that we talked about in today's episode.
Now I will translate. Iago ლიტერატურაში ცნობილია როგორც ბოროტი პერსონაჟი. Როგორ ფიქრობთ, რამ განაპირობა მისი საქციელი? რა იყო მისი мотивация? წერის დროს, მსჯელობის დროს გთხოვთ გამოიყენეთ ჩვენს მიერ მოთხრობილი ფაქტები.
Well, Ms. Maka, I think it is time to say goodbye.
Yes. That was really interesting. Thank you, the audience, for your interesting answers.
And thank you to the TV audience for following us, as always.
Yeah, okay, I guess that's all for today. Thank you, goodbye.
Have a great week. See you next time.
Bye.